Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Marine API Tech Talk and Office Hours session. What You Choose Her is one of Pulkit's favorite songs and one oldies, so hope you enjoy it. And let's get started. For today, we're going to be having Pulkit walk us through application integration in data platforms and unit tests plus CI/CD. So, without more nothing to say, I have to introduce you, for those who may be new to this session, the Marine API community. This community was originated in Madrid and has evolved to be this global network for all of those who are RPG and application integration enthusiasts. So we hope you find these sessions empowering so that you can keep on learning, accelerate the adoption of these technologies, and so you can feel connected with others across the world who are also in the path of learning alongside with you. The simple rules that we have for these weekly sessions is that we will have either two presentations of 15 minutes or just one like this time. At the end, we'll go over a Q&A discussion in which you can bring your questions for the topic that has been presented or have other questions in different topics related to RPG, APIs, or integrations. We will see you every Thursday in here. All of this content will be archived and recorded in the Google Cloud community. And I'll also send this to your email so that you can get it in hand and catch up at any time. But if you want to look at past recordings, feel free to reach out or look into the RSVP page or also in the Google Cloud community to look for these recordings. And we'll love to have external members of our community join us in this stage. So if anyone would like to present any topic of your interest related to APIs or integration, we welcome you. So please feel free to reach out. And well, before I introduce you to our speaker, which I'm really excited to have Pulkit with us, since he was one of the first collaborators in these sessions that we're organizing. If you want to drop your questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or look for these tree-shaped icons in the section of your Google Meet, and then you'll be able to leave your questions, and we're going to go over them. So now I finally get a chance to introduce you to Pulkit. Pulkit has been in the API and integration space for about 15 years. He has been working with various solutions and helping large enterprises with their APIs and integration strategies in various roles. And as of now, he's currently responsible for RPG and application integration pre-sales within the Benelux region. He is advising business and technical stakeholders on how to derive the most amount of value out of these solutions. So, Pulkit, it's so good to have you here now as a speaker for the Marine API session. So welcome, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Very kind, like always. Let me just take over the sharing. Hope I get the right tab. All right. So, hi, everyone. My name is Pulkit Mathur. I'm responsible for pre-sales in the Benelux region for APG and application integration platform. So, really nice to be here. I do remember when I was a host for the first session, and it's really, really amazing to see how the community has grown since then. So that is amazing. Today we have a lot of content to go through, and we have primarily two things that we are going to discuss today. So first of all is the activating event data with application integration, which is our no-code, low-code integration platform. And secondly, I'm going to show you how to create unit tests, which is a functionality which we released in the platform about 6 months back, and how to take them through your CI/CD pipeline. So let's get started. First of all, so let's go through the activating event data part first, right? So when we are talking about the activating event data part, there are basically two lenses. So one is the lens of the data platforms. So we are going to talk about activating event data for data platforms first. Like, right, data sinks like BigQuery, they are, one of the biggest consumers of events in the world. Companies all over the world, they generate a humongous amount of, let's say, services, transactions, and so on. And all of those events have to be put into BigQuery through one way or another, right? And BigQuery, it is the premier, let's say, data warehousing platform in the world. So that means that there is a lot of data that is going into BigQuery. Now, so this is basically, on a very simplistic level, the design looks like. So on the left, you have all of these systems which can generate these kind of events. For example, Salesforce, Splunk, but also pops up, but also, the rest of the clouds, Microsoft, and so on. All of that data is typically ingested into BigQuery, and from there it is consumed to, visualization systems like Looker. Right. So this is basically how it works on a very simplistic level. Of course, there are nuances, but we are going to talk about them. So let's go to the next slide. So if you look at GCP's data platform, right, this is how it looks like. So you've got a large amount of tools here. So you've got tools to collect this data, process it, this data, store it, and so on, right? So in this session, we are specifically focusing on the processing part. So in the processing part, if you see, there are multiple tools like Dataflow, Fusion, Data Prep, Composer, and so on, which have been used for a long, long time. Right? But what we see out there at our customers is that these tools are typically very code intensive, and you typically need very high coding skills to make use of these tools. Right? And that's where the platform comes in. So the platform comes in basically whenever there is data to be ingested into BigQuery, but not in a coding way, more of a low code, no code way, using which teams which do not have these data skills, they can also ingest this data into BigQuery. Right? So I think the most famous one of these tools is Dataflow, and Dataflow is basically considered a Ferrari, if I can say that, right? There is absolutely nothing which it cannot do. But being a Ferrari also means that it is quite expensive to run, right? And it requires very specialized skill sets, which might not fit the requirement for the tool if a team is looking to ingest data into BigQuery with minimum skills and does not want to ramp up to, a very complex tool set. Similarly, there are several other tools like Composer, Data Prep, and so on. And this is where we see that people do need a low code, no code, easy to scale on platform in order to build this kind of, let's say, workflows to ingest data into the data things like BigQuery. So on the slide, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but here we have a small comparison of the platform with a couple of, let's say, tools which are used in the data world. And the main, let's say, pro of the platform is that it is really low code, drag and drop UI, right? So even if you don't have high skills, you can still scale up to the platform and stitch together these workflows to ingest data into data things like BigQuery in a very, very easy way. I also want to show you an example of a customer that we are speaking to right now. So basically, it is a major retailer, and they have BigQuery as a data platform to store, all kind of data. For example, the customer orders, shipping data, supply chain, and so on. And up till now, the data team was the only one that was responsible for transforming this data, building out these data pipes, and ingesting that into BigQuery. But now, since they have a limited amount of, let's say, devs, they have, I think, a team of about 7 or 10 people, but they cannot scale this team, right? But the number of data pipes that have to be built are exponentially increasing. So what they're doing now is for partner integrations, for example, data that needs to come from their external partners into BigQuery, they were looking for a no-code, low-code, let's say, platform, which the partner teams, which do not have specialized skills, can also use. And for that, they're considering the use of the platform so that, the partner teams, which do not have a high level of skills, can also build these data pipes and ingest data into BigQuery. So this is a kind of a trend that we are seeing across multiple customers, also in multiple countries. the thing to keep into mind here is that this platform is not a ETL tool. So if there is a large amount of data to be brought into BigQuery, for example, 1 TB, 2 TBs, and so on, this is probably not the right tool to do it, right? Because we are not an ETL. We are really a drip by drip, let's say, tool which can ingest a small amount of data that needs to be transformed and then needs to be sent to BigQuery. All right, so up till now, we have been talking about ingestion into BigQuery. Now let's talk about extraction from BigQuery. So typically, BigQuery's primary use case has been of a data warehouse / data sink, where a lot of data is being sent to, and then that data is being picked up by tools like Looker. But there's a growing trend to use BigQuery also as a transactional system. So, for example, a lot of companies are also looking to use BigQuery as their, let's say, MDM, the master data management. And one simple example of this is BigQuery storing the golden customer profile, which is basically the single source of truth for a customer's data across all of the companies. Right? And a feature that is quite cool and which was released, I think, last year, is continuous queries. Has anyone heard about this feature yet? If yes, can you please raise your hands? Otherwise, I can give you a short overview of what this is. Okay, nobody. So let me just give you a short view of how this looks like, right? So basically, whenever you run an SQL on, let's say, a BigQuery, for example, select star from users, the query runs for, let's say, like 0.01 seconds and it stops, right? Whereas a continuous query is something that runs continuously. So as and when the user data comes into the table, the query sees that there is new data and it sends it out to a pop-up sub, or there are a few more options, and it can send it out to whichever system that you want to send it out, right? So that is basically a query that runs continuously and does not stop. So, and this can lead to a couple of very interesting use cases. So I'll tell you about a use case that we are working on as well. So basically, this is again a retailer use case. And the problem they had was that whenever a customer buys something in the store, the customer used to get the notification of that, thing that they bought in about 15 minutes or so, because their systems were quite slow. And they wanted to kind of revamp this whole design to make it more real time, that's it. So this is what we are planning to design for them, right? So here you see at the bottom that there is the POS, right? And then whenever the customer buys something, that event is ingested into BigQuery. There's a continuous query which is running on BigQuery, which takes this new thing that has come into the BigQuery table, and it sends it to PubSub, right? And the platform picks up that from PubSub. It supplements that with a lot of, let's say, things from, let's say, the loyalty management system, the store system, which says, okay, which staff member, kind of help the customer today. But also, for example, right, based on what the customer bought, what might the customer buy in the future as well, right? So recommendation kind of thing. And then it collects all of these things and it generates a mail which is hyper personalized to that customer, right? And what he did in the store, right? And all of this is completed within about 0.05 seconds, right? So this is really, really cool because first of all, the email, the communication that we are sending out is very, very relevant to what the customer did. And secondly, it does not take a long time at all. So this is something that we are trying to build now. Okay, so up till now, we were talking about BigQuery in the context of the event data. Now let's talk about, activating event data for the rest of the use cases. So data sinks are not the only, let's say, consumers of, let's say, events across the globe. There are many other event use cases. So one other use case that we are working on with a customer right now is that they have a web form on the website. And whenever a customer signs up, right, so that is considered a lead. And all of these leads have to be transformed to the format which is required by Salesforce, and they have to be ingested in Salesforce, right? So what we are building right now is that these leads, they come into Kafka, and then the platform picks it up from a Kafka topic. It transforms it according to the format that is required by Salesforce. And using the Salesforce connector, which is one of the 150 plus connectors that we have, it sends it to Salesforce. So such kind of transformation and code you would typically write in Cloud Run, let's say. Now you can do it with a completely no-code, low-code platform as well. So this is the second type of use cases that we see in the space. Okay, so that was about event data. Before I move on to the next section, which is test cases and CI/CD, any questions from anyone?
We don't have questions in the chat or in the Q&A as of now, but feel free to raise your hands or open your mic if you want to pop up question.
Okay, so I think let's go to the next section now. Let me just change sharing. And I'm going to talk about unit tests. So unit test is basically a feature that we released about 6 months back or so on. I believe it is going to go into GA very soon. Any mature platform, right, it needs the capability to have unit test, of course. And this platform is, of course, no exception. So, okay, the question is pricing different for continuous queries? I believe yes. So there is a reservation in BigQuery that you have to create for continuous queries, which is an extra cost. After the call, maybe we can leave a link to the pricing for continuous queries in this tab. So coming to unit tests, right? So I'm going to show you how to create some unit tests and how do we take that through the CI/CD pipeline, right? So this is the console, and I'm in the platform right now, and this is the list of all the flows that I've created here, which is not much, of course, but I'm going to create a very simple flow right now, and we are going to create some unit tests, and we are going to show you how to do CI/CD on that. So the flow that I'm going to create is a very simple flow, which is triggered by an API trigger, and it calls a REST API. So to create this, I'm first going to drag and drop an API trigger in the console, and then I'm going to create a REST task so that I can call a REST endpoint here. But what I want to do is I want to take this process through the whole CI/CD, right? And typically what you will see that the URLs that you're going to call in dev are different from the URLs that you are going to call in QA, prod, and stage, right? So rather than assign a static value to this URL, I'm going to assign something called a config variable. So a config variable is something that whose value can be changed when you take it through the CI/CD, right? So what I'm going to create is I'm going to create a config var called URL, and you can see that we have different type of vars here. So I'm going to choose the config var, and I'm going to assign it a default value of http bin.org, which is basically a echo service. And then in the call REST endpoint, I'm going to assign the value of this particular variable to the endpoint based URL here. Now there's one more thing I want to do because I want to show you how unit tests work here. So I'm going to also create a small mapping, and I'm going to do a very simple addition here, which is, let's say, I'm just going to add 2 plus 2 and assign the value of this to another variable. So I'm adding the integer 2 to integer 2 here, and then I'm creating a new var called sum. None, and there we go. Okay, so returning back to the console, I'm going to link all of these tasks to create a full flow. So basically, this flow is triggered by this trigger, and then it goes to the mapper. It adds 2 plus 2, and it assigns the result to a variable called sum. And finally, it is going to call a rest point, and the URL is here, right? The config URL. So now that our flow is designed, we are going to put some unit tests in here, right? So I'm just going to create a unit test. So what you can do in the unit test here is that typically when you create these tests, you want to test each of these tasks, right? And you want to make sure that each of these tasks is running successfully on their own. So that is also what we are going to do. First of all, I'm going to create a test for just testing the data mapping task, right? And how I'm going to make sure that it is only this data mapping task which is going to run is like this. So if I click on this, I have a couple of mock strategy types here. So there are 3 types, right? If I want this task to be run, then I'm going to choose no mock, which I'm going to do because this particular test case is for testing this specific task. So I don't want it to be mocked as such, but I want this to be run. Right? So I'm just going to select no mock here. And I'm going to add an assertion. Here there are a couple of things that can be changed as well. So how do I judge whether the execution of this task was okay? What I have to do is I have to check if the value of the variable sum that we defined previously was equal to 4, right? Otherwise, there's a problem. So if this task successfully runs and it adds 2 plus 2 and it assigns the result to a var called sum, the value of that sum should be 4, right? So this is what we are trying to do in this test. Now, since we are testing only this, we can also skip this one. And to skip this task, what we are going to do is we are going to click mock execution, and we are going to skip. So this means that in this particular test, only this task is going to be checked, and this task is going to be skipped. And which you can also confirm if you test this. So if I test this, and if I show you the logs here, you can see that the data mapping task was run. So the sum is equal to 4. But if you go to the call rest endpoint, you do not see any values here, right? So that means that the call rest task was not run. Similarly, I'm going to create one more test now. But this time we are going to test out the call rest endpoint task here. So and I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to skip the data mapping. So I've skipped this, but I want this to be checked, right? But there's no variable to check here, right? So what I'm going to do here is I have a couple of options again here. And one option is assert execution, where I can check if the task was run with success or failure. So the condition which should be fulfilled to make this test run successfully is that this task should be run with a success code, right? So this is what we are going to test here. So if I run the test once again, and if I go to the logs, you will see that the data mapping task was not run. So you do not see a sum variable here. That means the task was not run. But if you open up the call rest endpoint, you can see that there is a response body from the REST call that we made, which I think seems to be an HTML page. So that means that this task was successfully run. In a real world scenario, of course, you will have, let's say, fault handling and so on. And you are probably going to have a couple of more test cases which you would ideally like to create, right? So you can also do that, of course. So just taking a step back, right? Up till now, what we have done is we have created this small, simple flow. we have created two test cases for this, and we have confirmed that these test cases run successfully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the test mode, and I'm going to publish this flow. Right. So now the flow is published. Right now it is time for CI/CD. And to provide CI/CD functionalities, we have something called an integration CLI. So I'm just going to show to you quickly what an integration CLI is. So integration CLI is a utility that has been built on top of the product's management APIs. What it does is it provides you the capability to actually interact with these management APIs in an easier way. Right? So we have a couple of commands that you can run here and which we check here. So there are various things which you can do here, right? For example, if you go to integrations, you can import all the integrations, right? You can also list all the integrations. You can also download all the integrations that are running. For example, like see the call URL one, which we just created. You can download that particular integration, change the config var to a URL that you want to use in QA, and then you can upload the changed QA version to a different GCP project as well. Right? So there are a lot of things that you can do. Feel free to check it out and play around with it. But let's see how this works in practice. So I'm just going to open up Cloud Shell here. Okay. Sometimes it is hard to get Cloud Shell to play nice, but it's okay. So we are going to install the integration CLI here. And after that, we are going to download this particular flow. We are going to change the value of the config var, and then we are going to upload it once again. So, okay, now we're all set. So let me just open up my prompts, which I want to give to Cloud Shell. Second. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to download this integration CLI utility using curl. So I'm going to do that right here. So as you can see now, it is being downloaded, and the version that we have downloaded is version 0.81. If you're using integration CLI regularly, I think you should refresh it every few weeks because there is a lot of focus. So we do release new, let's say, versions of this every few weeks as well. So I'm going to just export the path as well so that we don't run into problems later on. And okay, now to use integration CLI, there are a couple of preferences that have to be set. So there are three things that have to be set. First of all, it is the project which the integration CLI should work with. So I'm just going to export the project ID here. And I'm going to assign this project ID to a variable called project.
Sorry, I think the screen is not shared. I think we are seeing the Git's UI. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Now you can see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So basically what I did up till now was I downloaded the integration CLI, and then I exported the path, and now I'm setting the vars which are needed to run the utility. So I just set the first variable, which is called project. Now I'm going to set the second variable, which is the token, which we need to talk to Google Cloud. It's asking for authorization. Okay, all done. And thirdly, I'm going to provide the region where the integration is deployed. Right? And the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to set the preferences for this integration CLI with all of these variables so that we do not have to provide these variables every time we make call. Okay. So now we are all set. Now what we are going to do is we are going to download this particular flow, which we have developed into a folder on our local system. So I'm just going to create a directory called URL, which is the name of the flow itself. And then I'm going to use one of the commands of the integration CLI, which is called scaffold. So scaffold means it is going to gather all of the config bars and so on, and it is going to download them in this folder that I have created here. And I will also show you the structure. Okay. So it's here. And as you can see, we have two folders here, dev and src. Now the src folder basically has the JSON representation of what you see on the UI, right? And the dev folder has all the configurations, like the, or did I hear a hand raise? Okay, no. And the second one, the dev folder, it actually has all the config bars and so on, right? So all the values which support this particular flow and the values which will be used in deployments, right? So now what we are going to do is, so we consider that the flow that we have designed just now is our development environment, right? And similarly, we have to create the QA version of it, right? So that we can deploy it to our QA GCP project as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this folder and I'm going to copy over the dev folder and I'm going to create a duplicate folder called QA. So if you see the structure now, we have got src, which is the source file for this. We have got dev, which has the values, dev values for all the config bars and so on. And we have QA, which has the values for QA, right? But in QA, we don't want to use this particular URL, which was here. We want to change this particular URL, right? So what we have to do is we have to go inside QA and we have to change the URL at the specific location. So I'm just going to open up the file which houses the config bar values. And here, as you can see, the config bar in the QA folder is still the URL from dev, right? So I'm just going to change this URL to another URL, which I want to call in QA. And the URL I want to call is this one. So I'm just going to save this file and I'm going to come out. Okay. So basically now we have created the QA config for this flow, which means that we can now deploy this QA config to a GCP project. Now in real life, the GCP project for QA would be something else. But since we are just working with this GCP project, I'm going to treat it as both dev and QA. And I'm going to just redeploy the QA version in the same GCP project, right? So ideally, when I deploy, you should see the version 2 of this flow automatically deployed here. So I'm just going to use the apply command of the integration CLI to upload the QA version of this. And let's see if it succeeds. Yes, I think it runs. So let's see if the version 2 was deployed. And as you can see, the version 2 was deployed as well. And now if I see the config bar, it should have the new value, which was mocktarget.apg.net. So if I see the details, as you can see, the value of the config bar has now been changed. So our CI/CD pipeline is successful. So I think this was how the integration CLI can be used in the CI/CD world. Recently, we also published actually a couple of blogs showing, how to use integration CLI in combination with Cloud Build. but also some other systems like GitHub Actions and so on. And probably we are going to leave the links to those articles in the chat so that you can take a look, and please give us some feedback on what else you would like to see in the future. So this was it for me. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, we can do it now.
Yeah, hi, Pulkit. Hello.
Hey, Graham.
Hello. Yes, we've been using application integration probably for 2 years now, ever since it kind of moved from 𝗓𝗓𝗊.
Yes.
And it's greatly improved during that time, and actually is very stable and works very well. And I think this is going to be a very good addition. So I've been looking through the instructions just of how we're going to integrate unit tests, and especially CI/CD pipeline. So far, we've had to kind of write our own scripts, and especially where things like connectors change between different environments, we've had to kind of get the idea of the connectors and do all of this. So I think this is going to be really, really useful. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit of work to integrate into our GitHub pipeline, so it just runs the unit test automatically. Now, I'm assuming the unit tests don't actually form part of the integration. So obviously, we will want unit tests in dev and probably our QA environment. But when we go to our production environment, we probably don't want the unit tests deployed. So I'm assuming that the unit tests are actually configured separately in the scaffold and not actually part of the source file. Right. Okay. So when I build a production one, I could just basically remove the unit tests if I just want it deployed in production.
Absolutely. It is the same way as you see the config bars, right? So all of this surrounding stuff is actually in the dev and QA folders, which is separate from the SRC. So you're clear.
Yeah. So
and
the only thing,
Graham, I remember we met about I think 1.5 years back or so. So
yeah. The only feedback I do have on the unit test, it's very hard to find the logs in the actual interface. So I don't know whether you've found an easier way, because obviously if you click on logs, you just get the normal logs, you don't get the unit test ones. And to actually find the unit test ones, you kind of got to filter, but not even on the integration name. You've got to filter on kind of word unit tests and then the integration name. Do you know they're going to make that easier to actually be able to see the test logs?
I think that is really good feedback. I think this is, I don't know if this is on the radar of product yet, but I think what I can do from my side is I can check it out. If this is, let's say, what we call internally a cloud blocker that is raised. That is basically a feature request. I think there definitely should be an easier way to figure out unit test logs.
Yeah.
Great.
And the other thing which will be useful is at the moment you can run all the unit tests from the command line from the CLI tool. I don't think you can run all the unit tests from the front end. You obviously have to run them individually. I'm assuming there's not like a way of running all unit tests, because as we get more and more complicated integrations, we're going to have 30, 40, 50 unit tests. Now, we'll probably always run them from the back end anyway. But it might be a useful feature for those who aren't integrating to the CLI tool to be able to say, go and run all my unit tests in one go.
Yes, I think you're right. Typically, you would run all of your unit tests at one go using your CI/CD pipeline, right? And if something fails, you are going to stop the CI/CD, of course. Interesting feedback as well. Let me see what is the potential of that. But that could be interesting as well. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, really, really good. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we would absolutely love to, have more feedback on this, right? Please play around with it. Let us know how it is, and we are very happy to improve it.
Thank you, Graham. I think I saw other people trying to open their mic and raise their hands, so please feel free to pop your question. Yes, Purna?
Yeah, hi, Pulkit. Yeah, hi, everyone. So I just want to have some understanding on the application integration which we use in our organization, where we are bringing data from Workday. So currently I've created some application integration with the help of the Workday connector, and I try to bring the created loop multiple times. Because of that, as you said, that data, it will not accept the huge amount of data. And when I go through the documentation of that, it supports only 10 MB of data for a page
Right.
size or something.
Correct.
So I just want to know, is it an extended or is it still resets in the 10 MB page only for that?
Yeah, so right now the limit is 10 MBs for the data that can be processed within a single execution of a flow. You're right. We are planning to make it 200 MBs in the short term. I don't know when we are going to release that feature. However, it is available in private preview right now. So if you have a use case that needs more than 10 MBs to be processed, please reach out to your sales rep. They can, get your project whitelisted for this new feature. And I believe this feature should be GA soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Marcellus, go ahead.
For app connectors like SAP, is it necessary to have it hosted in GCP, or for
No.
example, is it okay to connect to Alibaba Cloud or AWS?
Absolutely, they can be hosted, wherever you want. We do have customers who have SAP hosted on-premise, and they're using the product successfully. So you just have to take care of the networking, of course, right? Like you would have to do in whichever tool you use. But once the networking is in place, you should be able to connect to, whichever system you want.
Thank you.
Maybe just one additional comment on that one. So especially with working with SAP, often the SAP systems are in private networks, right? Or they don't have a public gateway, perhaps, right? Or it's, you have to go through the customers or your own internal network to get to SAP. This works similarly in application integration as in Apigee, that you can create a PSC connections. So private service connect is kind of the private networking connectivity option in Google Cloud. PSCs then have attachments that you could then kind of direct the traffic into your own network. And then there's another service in Google Cloud that came out about a year ago that's been very helpful with this, called Secure Web Proxy, which is a managed service that then you can use on the other end of PSC, Private Service Connect, to receive traffic and direct it in the internal network, right? So it's managed service. So both of those two services can be very helpful connecting to backend SAP systems that might not, they might be on premise, they might be in other clouds, but they maybe don't have a public, internet endpoint, right?
Is this similar to the private GitLab repository connections in Dataform, where we need to apply for the firewall to be, well, we have problems with GitLab, private GitLabs that are behind the firewall, and we need to apply for something to have
Right.
the.
Where do you have to apply for that? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know specifically with GitLab. I don't have a lot of experience, but yep.
Yeah, because Dataform, BigQuery Dataform, we can connect our GitLab, private GitLab, if it's connected to the public internet, right? But if it's
Right.
behind a firewall, we can't really do it. So I don't know if this still works the same way for SAP, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. So is it self-service, or do you have to create a support ticket, or how do you make that request for GitLab? So I'm not.
I haven't figured it out yet for Dataform.
Okay.
That's why I'm also worried with that SAP.
Right. I mean, I can say from experience that using PSC, it's definitely works, right? I mean, once you have it working, and yes, there are often firewalls on premise or in front of the SAP, wherever it is. So those have to be, configured to let the traffic through that are coming from our connector. But it's when it works, it's extremely reliable and stable, and it's just a matter of making sure that the networking is configured correctly. And in the end, it's very scalable as well, right? So PSC is a managed service. Secure Web Proxy scales automatically. So once you have it set up, then it just works. Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the data flow use case, but if it uses PSC, then it would be similar. And the nice thing about PSC is that it's all self-service, right? So you can configure it yourself. and attach it and make that connection between application integration connectors and your own network, right? However, don't underestimate this topic. It does take some investigation, right? And of course, the SAP systems are very tightly guarded, right? It's a big, important systems, and they're mission critical, and so you'll definitely probably need approvals and from the SAP team and security team to get the connectivity in place. But once you get that process finished, then it works very, very well.
Networking is everybody's favorite topic, right, Tyler? Yours especially. So
I'm just happy when we can use managed networking services, right? So that we don't have to deal with address space. I mean, for networking experts, that's fine. But I think for a lot of us, right, we're trying to get use cases working and apps working and integrations working. And so I'm very happy when we can do that with managed services like Private Service Connect and SWP.
absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. Do we have any more questions? Anyone wants to share? I think we're all good. So thanks so much, Pulkit, for this session. I think it's been valuable. And as we saw the feedback, they enjoy in-depth technical sessions. So thank you for that. I should share with all of you in the 3 figures that you'll have in the meeting, the feedback poll that you can share with us. It's just a simple question on how satisfied you were with this event. So if you can take a moment to go over it and share your feedback, we'll really much appreciate it. And well, we have for you the recap of some of the latest articles we have been sharing in the community. I'll have the links here in the chat, but also feel free to, when we share the deck, you can open the PDF and you'll be having the hyperlinks in each and every of these so that you can have easy access to them. Not most, but all of these articles are related to application integration, so it's a good way to keep the continuous learning in these areas. I also included I think it was the GitHub repository that Pulkit should share with you. So you also have this in the deck. I'll include that. I'll make sure of that. And while we look forward to have you joining us in the community, remember that you have the RPG and the application integration forums. You can also keep on joining us in these weekly sessions that we have. For the month of March, we'll be having monitoring topics for the month. We'll be covering Prometheus, Grafana, and RPG Analytics. So we look forward to see you there. Any insights or sneak peeks that we could share, Tyler, on the sessions they can expect for this month?
Yeah, so this is a common topic the customers talk about is like, how can I expand the analytics and monitoring into common tools like Prometheus and Grafana and create custom dashboards. And so I think this will be really fun to dive into that, both for Apogee and also application integration. And just think about, day 2, day 100 advanced use cases around monitoring and analytics. And if anyone has specific questions or ideas or topics on that, then just reach out and be happy to cover that. So we'll have the whole month of March to go deep on monitoring and analytics.
Yes. Thank you, Tyler. So with that, we're nothing to say to all of you. We thank you all for joining this session. We'll make sure to share with all of you. Have a nice week for the rest, and a nice weekend in advance. We hope to see you soon. And again, thank you, Pulkit, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.